Mr Chairman.
Mr Speaker, the House and Committee has considered the Student Loan Scheme Exemptions and Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Bill and reports it without amendment. Mr Speaker, I move that the report be adopted.
The question is that the report be adopted. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. The contrary will say no. The ayes have it. The bill is set down for third reading forthwith.
Mr Speaker.
See you in an hour.
The Honourable Peter Dunn.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Student Loan Scheme Exemptions and Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Bill be now read a third time. Mr Speaker, this bill includes a suite of mainly technical changes to the student loan repayment rules to ensure that the law is clear, consistent and that it operates as intended. The bill also extends interest-free loans to borrowers from Niue, the Cook Islands and Tokelau, which share a special relationship with us as part of the realm of New Zealand. As the Ross dependency is also part of the realm of New Zealand, people who go there will also be eligible for an interest-free loan. There was some debate, sir, in the committee stage about how many people would actually go to the Ross dependency and be eligible for a loan, and were we in fact producing a nation of well-educated penguins? Mr Speaker, the reality is there will be some people on scientific exchange who will benefit from this. While they won't be great in number, I suspect that their contribution to New Zealand in future years will be great in substance. The borrowers will have to comply with the same requirement to be in one of those countries for 183 days in the same way that New Zealand borrowers are, so that borrowers from a realm country have an incentive to return home after their study and to make a positive contribution towards their country's future. That's a provision that's probably of greater impact with regard to Niue, the Cook Islands and Tokelau than the Ross dependency, but the same point applies nonetheless. Mr Speaker, the bill also extends interest-free loans to include students who choose to further their education overseas through full-time study under formal exchange programs or formal agreements between New Zealand and overseas tertiary education providers. There is some anomaly in this area at the moment, and this change will be of considerable benefit to a number of New Zealand students, particularly as they go further through their studies. The bill also includes a number of small refinements which make this part of the bill provide greater clarity for borrowers, and they were added during the Select Committee stage process. The first of those changes defines the term overseas tertiary provider. So it is actually clear what type of organisation borrowers must be engaged in full-time study with overseas in order to qualify for interest-free loan status. And that will immediately deal with some concerns that there might be about the bona fides of some of the organisations and institutions that people were enrolled with. The other change extends the overseas exemption to include those who are engaged in full-time postgraduate study overseas if their studies cannot be completed in New Zealand. And when we want to talk about a highly skilled nation and upskilling the intellectual capacity of our public, then that ability to actually go and complete overseas postgraduate study when it's not available in New Zealand is particularly important. So the purpose of all these measures is to recognise the value that students who do pursue further training and study overseas bring to New Zealand, as well as encouraging them to take up the opportunities to do so. The remaining changes that the bill introduces are largely technical or remedial in nature. They include an amendment to correct an unintended change to the hardship relief provisions that was made by the Student Loan Scheme Amendment Act 2007, a change that allows Inland Revenue to raise the compulsory repayment deduction rate from 10% to 15% to help ensure that borrowers pay their correct loan repayment amounts, and the removal of a technical problem so that borrowers who return to New Zealand and wish to fully repay their loans before they've met the 183-day requirement to qualify for an interest-free loan can now do so. Mr Speaker, there was some debate during the committee stage of the bill about the adequacy of its title, and there are a number of suggestions made by members, particularly from the opposition side of the House, to greatly extend the title of the bill to maybe more accurately in their minds reflect some of its provisions. But on balance, and I'm sure the House will concur with me, that having heard what this bill is about, it was decided that the title Student Loan Scheme Exemptions and Miscellaneous Provisions Amendment Bill was in fact the more accurate, if less colourful, description of the bill's title. I want, as the bill does come to its third reading, to acknowledge all of those who have contributed to its successful passage thus far. In particular, I want to acknowledge the policy officials from Inland Revenue and our drafter for their work on the detail of the bill. I want to acknowledge those who made submissions to the Select Committee and others who made submissions aimed at improving the practical application of the measures. I want to record my thanks to the Select Committee for the detailed consideration it gave the bill, for its recommendations which have given greater clarity to the legislation. I also want to thank those who participated in what was, I think, a good-natured and constructive debate. As it now stands, the measures that are contained in this bill will help to ensure that the student loan scheme works in the way that it should for both borrowers and the Crown. And that's got to be important, given that the opportunities the bill provides so many students, or the student loan scheme provides so many students, got to be matched by the Crown's responsibility to manage what is now a multi-billion-dollar asset in terms of outstanding loan liabilities. So, Mr. Speaker, it is a balanced process. I think it's been widely accepted by the House, and with that I have great pleasure in commending the bill to the House for its third reading.